Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'll call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome councillors here today and Michael Chamberlain and our new CEO, Debbie Lascelles. I'll first call for apologies. I have one from Bronwyn Reid. I don't think there are any other apologies. Would someone move that apology be accepted? John Gardine. And seconder. Michael Chamberlain. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. The first item on the agenda is the quarterly Treasury report. And Miles O'Connor's with us, but I'll ask Lorne to say a few words before we have Miles come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the report as read and I'll let Miles answer any questions that elected members may have.
Thank you. Can you hear me at all, can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you this afternoon. As you said, I'll take the report as read, but there is, I think, probably just an update because that was a report at the end of June, end of March, and now we're coming up at the end of June. It's a wee bit hectic. Would you like me to give you about a 5-minute update just on where things are?
Yes, please.
Okay. Globally, we've basically started the easing cycle, amongst the central banks. Europe, Sweden has already cut the cash rate. Canada has, and Europe has. So the European Central Bank has as well. So we've finished the tightening cycle, which was a result of the COVID-induced inflation, which was unforeseen. And now inflation looks like it is under control broadly, on a global basis. And next, that we'll be looking for the US, to give a signal when they might be cutting their interest rates, and that could be, well, they're projecting that the Fed members are projecting two interest rate cuts this year. So the inflation bogey, I think, is behind us, and we are looking for a period of lower interest rates globally. And the inflation data is supporting that, and some of the data coming out of the US recently has been quite weak, and it's led to their 10-year bond rate, which is the global benchmark long-term interest rates, to fall about 30-40 points. In New Zealand, a couple of things. I don't know how to phrase this, but I think we're the only country in the OECD, or one of the few countries in the OECD that's in recession, and we have the highest interest rates in the developed world, developed economies. And the Reserve Bank seem to be ignoring that to some extent, because since this report came out, it was about 3 weeks ago, we had the monetary policy statement. And it's something that I've never seen in my career in the financial markets. Because what they did was they came out and they said, we're keeping the cash rate at 5.5%. But they increased the track. But they did say, Adrian said in the formal presentation, accompanying the monetary policy statement, that we gave very serious consideration to increasing the cash rate. No one foresaw that. But also in the document, they produce a projected track of the official cash rate. And in February, they do the monetary policy statement 4 times a year. In February, they decreased the track of the 90-day rate. This time, totally against market expectations, they increased the projected track going forward of the OCR. And they also pushed out the timing of the first cut in the OCR from June next year to December. So that came as a total surprise to the markets. The rates. Now, just finishing on that, we've got the GDP, with GDP data, which is one of the two most important data releases in the year. We'll get the GDP data for the March quarter released on this Thursday. We're one of the last countries in the world to get our GDP data out. Why it takes so long in New Zealand, I don't know. The Reserve Bank in this monetary policy statement, because it hadn't been out yet, they forecast it to increase by 0.2%. That means we're out of recession because we have to have, well, we've already got 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. We're in recession, but if it's a positive, we're out of recession. Bank's expectations vary a bit. Reserve Bank has to say 0.2, ANZ are at 0.2, whereas Westpac are at -0.2. So it'll be very interesting to see what we have there. From what I'm seeing, the first quarter was not good at all. The only sector that really seems to be sort of bouncing back or increasing is tourism. The rest of it's not too good. So that's the quick economic summary. Are there any questions on that?
Does anyone have any questions for Miles? Well, thank you for that summary, Miles.
Just go.
Do you have a question? Yeah. Do you want to say something, Miles?
No.
Okay.
No questions?
I'll jump in there, Chair, then. Thank you for that, Miles. That is very thorough. I wouldn't say it's great, but thorough is very good. Is there any, I'm going to try and bring this down to my level of economic knowledge, which is very little. What trends are we seeing to kind of get out of this stage, or for our council in particular, are we looking at another pretty rough year next year, predicting our perceived interest rates going forward? Is it likely to get worse before it gets better?
What, as far as your exposure to interest rates?
Yes.
Yeah. So if I went onto the report further, so I'll just go through one slide and then I'll get to your question, Ben. Liquidity and funding, it shows your maturity profile. And you're well within your limits there. Your debt has increased actually to, what is it, about 60 million now, or no?
No.
It's sitting at 55 million miles.
Oh, 55, sorry, I'm thinking Valley Council. You're within policy. Liquidity ratio, which is something I was going to bring up with you. We'll just have to make sure that you're going to be within that 110% by the end of the year. And that's your undrawn bank facility plus cash in the bank. At 55 million, you have to have 5.5 million of liquidity. So I can talk about that with you maybe tomorrow, Lord, if that's all right. Cost of funds is 4.86% as at 21 March. Now, on the page, it's my page 5, it's called Interest Rate Risk Management. On the bottom left, I produce a chart, and this is an answer to the question. Is it likely to get better? The blue line that you can see in that chart is your projected cost of funds. And it shows that it's actually declining. I would be stunned, or okay, no, it's probably too strong a word. I'll be very surprised if it does not decline further than that. And actually, since I wrote that report, it's based on projected future interest rates, and that line has dropped closer to probably 4.25%. I can actually update it further after the GDP number. As I said to Lorna this morning actually, I'm hoping that we get down to close to 4%, but if we do, I'd be locking in quite a considerable amount of debt at that 4%, because it represents a reasonably significant decline for you. So with what we've
Thanks for that, Miles. I guess the chart that's in front of us, which I do recognise as March, goes at that slight uptick, but it's nice to hear that that then obviously comes down a bit, and 4% sounds a whole lot nicer than, what is it, 4.8, which we're at the moment.
Just a question, Miles. We have 3.5 million at 0.99% coming off next year on 15th of July. That'll have an impact on us because we won't be able to get...
So I didn't quite check, you had a what, of
3.5 million, and it's at 0.99%, a fixed rated bond. We've got it comes off on the 15th of July. That will impact on us when we try and get reborrow that. It'll be at 5 or 4.5 or something percent. That'll cut into our debt. Interest.
Yes, that's actually incorporated in that graph.
Okay. Okay.
So what that graph actually does is that it takes you current debt, and when that comes off, it takes the future floating rate, because it's assuming that you haven't got any cover for that at the moment. And so that is fully factored into that, and actually that projected rate that will take over when that 15th July, that 3.5 million comes off, is already in that graph that I showed you earlier.
Yeah, thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Miles about the report? Anything else you want to know? I'll go back to the front page. Would someone like to move? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, there's one other point. If you go back to the interest rate risk management slide, it'll show that you haven't got too much, you haven't got an awful lot of fixed rate cover. What I'm targeting, and I've spoken to Lorna about it, I've had some informal discussion with Michael about it as well, so I'll be interested in either of your thoughts, but I really want to see some of these interest rate swap rates, which we use to fix your debt, go to like 4%. And then I think that's a reasonably good starting point to increase some of the cover. Now, those rates have fallen over the last 3 weeks, and we're getting quite close to it. If I start an interest rate swap in March 26 and April 26, July 26, and going out for 3 years, the rate is about 4.1% at the moment. If we get a bad GDP number on Thursday, that rate, I'm pretty sure, will fall below 4%. And that's just that sort of magical number below 4 with the 3 in front of it. I would like to initiate some hedging for that. And as I say, it won't quite achieve your overall cost of funds at 4, because you've got to put the margin on top of it, but it's a starting point. And I think it's achievable.
Thanks, Miles. Has anyone got anything else they want to say before we go to the recommendation that the report be received? Would someone like... Oh,
Mr Chair, at the last meeting we talked about establishing a Treasury Committee.
yes.
And since the last meeting there hasn't been a meeting of the Treasury Committee. Did Council make the decision to decide to set one up?
We did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Mr Chair. That is in progress, and we will try and arrange a meeting in the short term. With staff shortages and high workloads, trying to organise that with and balance workloads has been a little bit problematic, but we're hoping we'll get a wee bit of, I guess, clear air coming forward.
Are there any other comments then? Would someone like to move the recommendation this report be received?
Sorry, Chair, just one more comment from me. Just with that Treasury Committee and recognise that we're a bit tight with annual plan at the moment, does that Treasury Committee need to meet before that GDP number comes out, or when that GDP number comes out? Just thinking around time frames, is that urgent from?
Through the Chair, my recommendation would be that the Treasury Management Panel meet before the next refinancing happens on in mid-July. So we're due to have 2 floating notes come off in July. So my anticipation would be that we'd call a meeting before then.
If I could just say something here, it may be that we might need to move before then. I think that under the terms of your Treasury policy, the Corporate Services Manager does have authority to enter into Treasury transactions or hedging transactions. I have discussed it with other members of the Audit and Risk Committee, or obviously
Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll be giving you an update anyway before, after the, well, be giving Lorna an update after the GDP number.
I think that's preferable. Just it'll take, I guess, that Treasury Committee a bit to get up and running, and probably throwing them in the deep end. It might be just left to the professionals for the meantime, and we'll introduce that Treasury Committee in due course.
Right. Anyone got anything else? Councillor Gardine?
Yeah, what is the margin on the swaps, Miles? Against going...
Got to add to it is, it varies according to what type of underlying instrument. I hope I'm not getting too complicated here. So an interest rate swap fixes your interest rate, but it doesn't fix your margin. That's determined by your underlying funding. Now, your weighted average margin is so that because the longer the maturity that we take out of the underlying debt, the more it is. But the weighted average margin is about 50 points.
0.5%.
But it may be that we've got capacity to adopt a shorter funding maturity, which will lower the margin. But about 50 is the number.
So you could be looking at 4.5% cost against bonds, probably sitting on 5.
Well, initially, it would be all up to 4.5%, but as I said, I'm expecting these rates to fall further. And that I think we just need to get it, it will only be a toe in the water, and then we look to build it up. You just don't want them to get, because these rates briefly come down, and then literally they were down just below 4%. I didn't even have a chance to drink for half an hour about 2 months ago, and then they shot back up.
Right. Anyone got? Right. The recommendation is that we receive the report. Would someone like to move that we receive the report? Moved Councillor McPhail, seconded Michael Chamberlain. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right. Thank you for that, councillors. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is the annual planning report.
You've finished the fee, have you? That's all.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Miles.
Can I just grab you for 1 minute? Just to finish on a light-hearted note, because I was probably pretty negative there. I've told other councils that have people heard about the cost of bus shelters from Greater Wellington Regional Council?
No.
Greater Wellington Regional Council run the bus services, and I'm just talking about this in context of spending by local authorities, and you think if your CapEx expenditures over the top. Greater Wellington Regional Council run the bus services in Wellington, have to put 10 new bus shelters in. I think they've got digital signage as well, so you can tell me when the bus is coming. What do you think is the average cost of the bus shelter, of each bus shelter?
Councillor Gardine?
450,000?
Anyone else? Michael?
I can only go by Auckland prices, which would be 2.5 million.
That's not quite that, but 1.2 million each.
What?
But Wellington does have a big homeless problem. So that's just the average house.
Well, as they said, it's more than the cost of a new house. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that, so if you think your CapEx costs are too high, just think about Greater Wellington Regional Council. I won't take any more of your time. Thank you, and have a good meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Miles. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now we've got the audit planning report. I'll let Lorna introduce it, then she'll hand over to Mike from Deloitte's.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with us online, we've got audit partner Mike Hawken and the audit lead DJ. Welcome along. Mike is no stranger to Gore District Council. He was the appointed auditor prior to Mike Hoshik taking over 4 years ago. Mike Hoshik is on extended leave during a critical time for having the annual report adopted, which is why we have Mike Hawken in play. Look, just to reassure elected members, the audit program this year is looking fairly much business as usual. There's nothing unusual in there that I can see. There's the key items like Matto Ridge, which is unique to our council. We've been given some reassurance from Deloitte that there's staffing. We've got DJ who has been on our audit before, and we've got another staff member who has worked on the audit last year and has been down for interim. So we've got some continuity there of staff. The concern from my area will be around our timing, and we'll just need to make sure that the finance team has everything in order so that when they get down there they can hit the ground running and we're not still trying to finish everything off. So they're due to be on site on the 23rd of September for the final audit. But I'll hand over to Mike and DJ. Welcome.
Thanks, Lorna, and hopefully everyone can hear me okay.
Yep.
Look, yeah, firstly, thanks for giving us the opportunity to come along and present the report to the committee. As Lorna pointed out, it's been a few years since I've been involved with Gore District Council, but certainly looking forward to getting back and seeing where things are at. In the meantime, I've been doing the likes of QLDC and Southern District Council over the last few years, and Environment Southern. So, I'm familiar with the sector. We'll be working through some consultation documents, some long-term plans. Clearly, we'll be dealing with that next year. But hopefully it means that we have a nice smooth transition in terms of me stepping in for my portion this year. In terms of our plan is largely consistent with where we were previously. I will take our report as read, but perhaps just highlight a couple of comments in our report and then give the committee an opportunity to ask any questions of me. In terms of our areas of focus, I think some of those areas are very common across councils. The rates areas, management override controls, they're very standard matters, not specific to Gore, but for which we focus some attention in our procedures for council audits. Probably the couple that I'd just like to point out that are quite specific from the Gore perspective is the valuation of property, plant, and equipment. Prices have obviously been volatile across most classes of infrastructure in the last few years. There has been an exercise that management have worked through to undertake an assessment of where they believe that the movement in that fair value has gone or likely to be in 2024. We're just working through that with Lorna at the moment. We think we're leading towards not undertaking a valuation for 2024, but we're just sort of concluding that with Lorna and the management team at the moment. Really that comes down to an assessment of whether we think there's been a material movement in the underlying assets that are carried on the balance sheet of council. And typically when we're talking about material movements in those assets, we're talking about plus or minus 10% as an indicator of what we think is material. So we're just working through that process now with Lorna, but I point that out for the benefit of the committee. Another couple of areas I think just worth touching on is really the Matai Ridge, and we had a catch up earlier this week with Stuart, Lorna and Debbie just in relation to where that's at. Clearly the property sales haven't moved. I think Miles' update was probably quite sobering and no surprise the linkage between lack of movement in some of that property space given the economic conditions. We will need to have a look at that again this year. We're comfortable with where things stand though, and I guess just thinking about the recoverability of council's investment in that development. So we'll just work through that with Lorna. I don't anticipate any issues with that, but again it is something that is a little bit sort of unique to Gore and something that we need to look carefully at during the audit process. The last one to touch on really is just the
Michael.
On page 28 of our papers, which is page 17 of your paper, there's a page on sensitive expenditure. Is that likely to cause issues this year given the last 12 months within the council?
I think it'll cause issues. I mean, one of the things that we did talk about with Stuart, Lorne and Debbie is there are some disclosures and that we will need to make in relation to the FY24 financial statements, and those are compensation payments to staff leaving the organisation. And I think, you know, there's been some well-publicised departures from the council management in the current year. So we will need to work with management around including disclosure of that in the financial statements. You know, very aware that there will be some sensitivity associated with that, with those disclosures. They are done on an accumulated basis, so it's not individual disclosures. But, you know, we're conscious that there's often not a lot of people that, you know, contribute to that disclosure. So, you know, we're certainly aware of that. In terms of any other sensitive expenditure, look, there's nothing out of the ordinary there. I think, you know, we already undertake a number of tests around probative expenditure, and we'll continue to do that. But I don't anticipate that there's going to be any issues there.
The other question was you defined material movements as plus or minus 10%. A 10% movement in asset values, when you translate that through as to what it means for future depreciation and therefore impact on rates, starts to get into what I call the definition of material, particularly in the context of a year where rates are going to be going up quite a lot. Are you comfortable about that 10%?
Yeah, that 10%, it's not a hard and fast 10%, it's an indicative sort of threshold that the RAG has provided. And the logic behind that was, you know, often from a ratepayer's perspective, they're interested in the profit and loss, and they're interested in how much expenditure council are undertaking and how much they then need to fund by way of rates. What you then find is that you've got a balance sheet which has got a disproportionate high value of assets under management. So the tolerable variation in that balance sheet at 10% is a lot higher than what we would ordinarily see from a P&L perspective. So, but the reason for that is that, you know, you might have a $30 million movement in your balance sheet number, but that might only equate to an impact in your P&L of $1 million, given the life of the asset. So, you know, that's where we look at both of those factors to determine, you know, how do we think it's material, and how do we conclude on that. So the 10% is really just a guide. We certainly do consider what's the nature of the asset, how long does it get depreciated over, what's the likely consequence of that on the P&L, and ultimately what would that need to be funded by from a ratepayer's perspective. So all of that comes into that assessment of materiality when we look at those movements.
Is that all you've got, Michael? Yeah. Do you want to turn off your mic, please? Anyone else got any questions of Mike? Mayor Ben Bell.
Maybe a question for Lorne, but those valuations, just given the economic times we've just been through and that jump in valuations, would that 10% or less than 10% likely to be a lowering of valuations or an increase, or is that hard to predict?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it would be an increase. So there's some areas, some of our infrastructural assets are down around that 2, 3, 5%, and some of them are bordering on that 10%. Where we have the balances around compliance and where we want to go, and also the fact that a full revaluation costs around between $85,000 and $100,000 these days. We did get a desktop assessment done last year through WSP, and they did the light touch look for us and said and resolved that they hadn't moved materially enough for us to want to do a full revaluation. And again, their recommendation was, since we had just had one, that it wasn't worthwhile. The 2 years, 2 year cycles may be more, given the volatility of the market, a 2 year cycle may be more realistic with where we're going. It would also provide us with the information to help us with our long-term plan ahead of time, so we don't end up with the massive movements that we had last time with the impacts of COVID. So.
Yeah, and maybe just to add to that, I think, historically it's not been unusual for valuations to be undertaken on, say, a 3-yearly cycle, particularly when you've got reasonable stability of input costs. What we've seen over the last few years is just the increase in construction costs in particular around infrastructure assets has really driven a lot of councils towards a much more frequent and in some cases an annual update of that valuation. And as Renee points out, that does carry a reasonable degree of compliance cost, given it's it's an accounting balance sheet sort of exercise.
Councillor Herval.
Just a question for the Chair. In terms of the recommendation you've got, I see that it includes the Chairman of the Committee authorised to sign the engagement letter. And just wondering at the timing to when you're looking to do that, because the delegations of this committee are only to make a recommendation to Council, and it can only be done following full Council meeting. So if there's a need for it to be done in the near future, it will require an urgent and late item at next week's Council meeting.
You announce that, Renee?
Through the chair, look, I think it can wait to the meeting afterwards to sign it. Traditionally, it is a formality normally, unless you're going to change auditors. It is normally just formality for the chair to go ahead and sign it. I take your point, Councillor Herval.
So just on that, I had a question as well. And I'm not precious about who signs it, but have I signed it? Do I sign the annual report? Is that how it works? And then the chairman signs the.
Yeah.
Cool. Just getting that cleared up. Thank you.
Okay. Just one question for you, Mike. You are well resourced with staff at the moment. I know in the past, when I've been working with auditors, you've been struggling, to get staff to do the jobs. You're well resourced.
Yeah, look, things are a lot better than they have been.
Yeah.
We've got the benefit of having some talented inbound people to New Zealand, such as DJ joining our team, and I think some of those economic conditions that Miles sort of referred to prevent opportunities from people leaving and pursuing them, which is advantageous from our perspective as well.
Thank you for that. Is there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to make? Well, does someone want to move there's 2 recommendations here, that the planning report prepared by Deloitte be accepted and that the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee be authorised to sign it. Do we want to put after it's gone to a council meeting? Add that to it, Susan?
No.
After it's been passed to the council meeting?
It's fine as it is. No, it's fine as it is.
Fine as it is, okay. Okay, well, moved by Councillor Garline, seconded by Michael Chamberlain. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thanks, Mike, for that. And thanks, DJ.
Thank you, Ron, and look forward to catching up
Yeah.
in Gore sometime soon.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mike. Our next item on the agenda is the health and safety report. Nikki, would you like to speak to this initially?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll just take it that it has been read and really just happy to take any comments. It's a pretty standard report this cycle round, but very happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone on the committee have a question? Councillor Paul McPhail.
Thank you, through the chair. Nikki, I'm just asking, I'm looking at the staff welfare side of things with the aquatic centre. Just wondering the process, for the support of staff with the abuse and all that's going on nowadays out there. Just checking to see whether we're wrapping stuff around the staff at the right time.
Yep, absolutely. That's the point of the Safe 365, that as soon as it comes through, we have a health. And I forgot to introduce Josh Ward, who's our new health and safety and wellbeing coordinator. It's followed up straight away. So as soon as they log the Safe 365, they'll get a call from me or from Josh just to make sure. They also are trained in situational safety so that they know how to handle and react. They're a well-oiled team, but as you can see from the report, it's interesting the amount that they are faced with, I guess. And it was purely for your information, because I know that sometimes those statistics, when I put them up, you want to kind of know what's happening.
Okay, cool. Just to ask another question, do you revisit the incidences, you know, like if you've got reoccurring customers, which we do, is the process in place for that?
Yes, they can trespass, staff trespass if it's repeated. That's on a case by case. Martin and his team usually review that, and if they're feeling like they need more support in those decisions, then they'll come to me and talk it through. But yep, they have that ability to trespass.
Cool, thank you.
Michael?
Through you, Mr. Chair, was there anything that's happened since the last meeting that would lead you to recommend that we should review our health and safety policy before its normal time?
No, I don't believe so.
That's good. And a follow-up question. Given the increased level of dangerous chemicals that the council is going to have to hold certificates for, are we comfortable with the level of first aid knowledge that we have generally across the council?
Yes, yeah, I am very comfortable with that, and the refreshers are all due again shortly.
Anyone got any other questions for Nikki, or any other comments on the report? Just, Nikki, it's a very detailed report here, and thank you for that. Just one thing, when you read through it all, I thought just at the start, just as a suggestion, if you had a section there that had any red flag, you know, something that, because you read through the things like a mirror coming off, you can sometimes, if you start scanning, you can actually miss a serious incident. So if you could perhaps put a thing in there, critical incidents or something, somewhere in the report, just so it flags it to you straight away. That's just a comment.
Yep, no, point noted, thank you.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions about the report?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Nick for the breakdown. It's actually good seeing that 5% are split out from the MLT now and breaking down what we're actually seeing happening in the aquatic centre. You've presented that quite nicely, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other comments, would someone like to move that the recommendation that the report be received? Councillor McPhail, Richard McPhail, seconded by Councillor Gardine. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against, carried. The next item on the agenda is Water Authority compliance sampling. Aaron, you're off here, and you've got quite a bit on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or Amy, our Senior Compliance Officer, will be also able to assist with any questions.
Joe.
What is the difference in the flows being recorded now that we're recording an increased flow compared to the old meter?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we haven't actually gone through and done an analysis of what the different flows are. That's something we can bring back to a future meeting if you'd like.
Any Michael Chamberlain.
On the reasons for it, right, the fact that we can now measure it more accurately, I didn't think that's a reason for us potentially or running the risk of having a breach. It just means that we're going to know about it a little bit more accurately. And so really the only cause was this lack of aeration. Right? And presumably with climate change, we're going to get more weather conditions that cause more problems. So do we need to be consciously doing something to improve aeration?
Through you, Mr. Chair. As part of our wastewater consent renewal that's coming up, that will take care of that as well. In the meantime, we've only had 2 samples that have come up to trigger level. So we're not even at our consent limit yet. It's just a trigger notification level that we're at.
Are there any other questions or comments on this first?
Just a point of clarification. My reading of the report was that we only collected samples on 2 days, and both of them were below the maximum level, but above the trigger level. Or did I misread the report?
That's correct.
Okay, is any other questions or yeah. Councillor Stringer?
Following up on that point, then, do we need to reassess the trigger levels if we're going to take the samples and they come in above that trigger level? Well, do we have to reassess where the trigger level sits at?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The trigger levels are set as per our consent. So we don't set those, it's Environment Southland that have set those trigger levels.
Sorry, following on from that,
Yeah.
through you, Mr. Chair, to Aaron, it's below the consent level, but are we notifying Environment Southland that we're hitting these trigger levels? Is it something that I keep an eye on?
Through the Chair, yes, we, as a requirement of our discharge consent, we have to notify Environment Southland when we hit or exceed the trigger level. And it's something that we have only done this season, and it's something we'll be monitoring a bit more closely going forward.
Michael Chamberlain?
Yeah, so it seems that our consent, we're required to measure on 2 occasions per year. And therefore, on both occasions that we measured, we had a notifiable event. And though we didn't exceed the maximum, we had a notifiable event. And statistically, we should only have to notify events about 15% of the time. So I think my concern is that we run the risk of not only always having a notifiable event, but exceeding the 15 kilograms per day. And if I was Environment Southland and every event was notifiable, so there's always 2 a year, then I would probably start tightening up on the consent.
I concur with that.
Yeah. Aaron, you're in the hot seat.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree we need to keep a closer look on this, and also our consent states that we have to take a minimum of 2 samples, 4 samples throughout the year, and I think we'll increase that and see if we can see any more increases in these results, and that way we can try and rectify an exceedance of the consent limit.
How old was the old flow meter? And I said you haven't tested against the new one. And that could be most of our trouble, is you're actually putting more water out than what we thought. And then we've been getting away with it because of a lack of flow, so-called.
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct. We think in the past the flow meter wasn't accurate. We're also capturing all the discharge, so there is a section that is overflowed that we are now capturing as well, whereas in the past we weren't capturing that. So there is that difference happening now. So, and as for the question on the age of the old flow meter, I wouldn't be able to speculate on that. I'd have to find out.
Okay. Is there any further questions on this report? So you'll be closely. Oh, sorry, Michael.
Just one other petty observation is that my understanding is our discharge is that we have to advise them of the breach within 5 days. And on each occasion we manage to exceed that. So we have to do it within 7 days, and on each occasion we exceeded that.
Through Mr. Chair, it's upon receiving the sample results from the lab, you have 7 days to notify the Regional Council.
Any other comments on this report? Would someone like to recommend that we receive the report? Michael Chamberlain, seconded Councillor Stringer. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. We now move on to Hillborough Avenue water treatment compliance update. Aaron, back to you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This report is just giving you an update of a technical non-compliance that our Hilbury Ave water treatment plant has occurred. This is where our telemetry system stopped recording. At no stage did we feel the water was unsafe. It just was not recording back to its backup to give us a trending result. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just from reading the report, you managed to retrieve most of the data through the technician, though.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the data that we could get back from Hilbury Ave was only 2 days, okay. Whereas the other sites we were able to retrieve all the data. So.
Okay, yeah,
yep.
Sorry. Yeah. Any questions on this report from the committee? Michael?
Under paragraph 5.1, you note that it's a software issue and there's not much that we can do about it, right? But presumably the council could review its process so it does manually pick things up within 24 hours.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this morning I was having a conversation with our telemetry provider, and there is a system where it can send us an alert if the backup fails. So that has been initiated for us, and coming into the long-term plan, we are starting to have discussions about the reliability and requirements for compliance that we need and whether the system is appropriate for that now.
Okay. Is there any other questions for Aaron regarding this report? So it's working now. Everything's working correctly now.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, everything's working at this stage.
Any other comments or questions? Would someone like to move that the report be received? Councillor Garline, Councillor Paul McPhail. All those in favour say aye. And against, carried. We now move on to the Three Waters Elizabeth Street Stormwater Infiltration Basin Annual Report. Back to you, Aaron.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The council is well aware of the new stormwater infiltration basin that was installed at Elizabeth Street. This is our first report to Environment Southland on the compliance and sampling that has been done. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? We appear to be no non-compliant conditions were identified, which is a good result. So, if there's no, oh, sorry, you're going to.
Just through the chair, obviously just confirming that we hit the required date, 14th of April. Just for the report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the report was
15th, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? Mayor Ben Bell?
A couple from me, just while it's on the table. Does it fill up? Does the basin fill up faster or as designed than predicted? Are there any material changes in what was designed versus what we're actually seeing out there? So the amount that it fills up, how quickly, and also how quickly it drains. There's just a little bit of concerns in the community. I don't have any personally, but.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's filling up and draining down as we expected. We have no issues with the performance of it. So, yeah.
Good to hear. And just while it's also on the table, fences, have we got a time frame for that now that that's been passed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the fence for that property started today. So it should be completed, I think, it's about the end of the week or early next week. But I can come back to you on time frame.
No, if it started, that's perfect. I'm sure I will get a call from the media once it's done.
Councillor Gardine?
Sampling doesn't apply to the Matai Ridge infrastructure because it doesn't go into the ground, is it? Is that the case? Yeah.
That's correct.
Councillor Haval?
I see there's some piezometers in the area. What do they tell us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they will show us if there is any adverse changes between what is being discharged to the ground in Elizabeth Street and if there is any effects within the neighbourhood.
Are there any other questions on this report? If not, can I have a mover? Mayor Ben Bell, seconder. Michael Chamberlain. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. We now move on to another water consent, which is on page 85, Water Consent Authority Compliance Sampling. Back to you, Aaron, again, is it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to pass this to our Senior Compliance Officer and let her talk about this.
Kia ora, and through the chair, I'll take the report as being read and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Stringer. Sorry. Mayor Ben
Thank you,
Bell.
Mr. Chair. Just for the sake of the meeting, just confirming that the protozol rules are for that UV treatment. That's the pipeline of the river. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So,
Happy to move if there are no questions, Chair.
okay, do we have a seconder for the report? Councillor Gardine. No other questions. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. I think that is the last of the water treatment ones. We now move to aged debtors reporting. Michael's not here, so I think it'll be you, Lene, is it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, this is a fairly standard report that councillors have seen multiple times now. I think the key things to point out is that 95.3% of the debtors at 30th of April were current, so that's fairly consistent with what we've seen in the past. The other items of note for March and April, the dishonours have dropped back, so that was quite pleasing to see. But other than that, happy to take the report as read.
Just to comment more on the question, just in a commercial environment, to have only 1.69% of the rates over way out there in the period at the end is quite a good achievement. You normally have up to 5% of your debtors in a commercial environment in trouble if you've got a $25 million pool of money. So we are reasonably good with that. Lorna, just one other question. Are we putting more people to debt management central than previously?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it does vary. Last year we did put more through, but that was because we had held off for a year with COVID and people recovering. The council were a little bit, we tried to put as many plans in place as we could ahead of time. That is still our preferred option, is to put plans in place. So as you can see, the difference between what we've sent to debt management being 340,000 compared to what we've actually got in our arrears of 130. The difference there is of people who are on plans. What we also do is, if people do go onto a payment plan, we waive the penalties. So we try and be as, as enabling as we can to help our community.
Mayor Ben Bell.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite pleasing to see that we have pulled back a little bit. I guess, is there any predictions looking down the barrel of next year with a high rate increase of this number steadily climbing into the next financial year?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the team have not done the modelling on that. We'll keep a close eye on it, and we'll keep reporting back to Audit and Risk on how it's all tracking.
Just on that, I guess from a governance angle, is there thresholds of that percentage where certain kickbacks come into play that this committee needs to be aware of? I know there's keeping track of it, but if we reach a threshold of 3%, does that then, are there domino effects from that in terms of what this committee needs to manage?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think there's anything that the governance team would need to manage as such. It's more like it's just keeping you notified of where we're at. And again, it's keeping in mind going into the long-term plan discussions of where we can look as an organisation to help ease some of the burden out there.
I think the only problem ends up if you started getting 10.6% of your ratepayers defaulting, your cash flow starts to dry up, and that's where Lorne we'd start running into problems, having to borrow short term to pay our bills and our wages, and that would start causing us a major headache and also increased costs. So as long as we can keep them down at the low end, we'll be fine. Is that a fair comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. And what we are seeing is we're still pushing for people to go onto direct debits, for people to go onto direct debits in line with their with wages coming in. It helps ease and smooth smooth the payments for them rather than waiting till the end of a quarter to pay the quarterly amount. So we do encourage our ratepayers to put them on direct debits.
Councillor Paul McPhail.
Thank you, through the chair. What percentage of people do that already, just out of interest?
I think we're getting close to 40%, somewhere between 36 and 40% is where we're currently sitting for direct debits.
Thank you.
Do you want to say something?
Perhaps I'll just add to the discussion that having been working at a council which had implemented a significantly high rate increase as well, this was a concern that was discussed around governance, and we didn't actually see an increase in, we didn't actually see that play out. So I think just be mindful that it's fine to speculate, but I think like what Lorna says is that actually just keep an eye on it and report on it and try not to stress too much about it at this point.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this report? I'm quite heartened by how low the overdues are. So can I have someone move that the report be received? Michael Chamberlain, seconded by Mayor Ben Bell. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. We now move on to the management accounts at the 30th of April. Hand over to Lorna to make a few comments first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start by saying this is the first set of management accounts we've had in front of Ordinary for many, many years, probably predating my time. So I will preface it with saying they are a work in progress and they will continue to evolve over the next few months and I guess years as we get a feel for what elected members what information they require. But to give you an example, one of the things we've already highlighted is that we will split out subsidies and grants into operational and capital, but they will still be above the line in total revenue. We'll also look to split out some of the activities a bit further. So at the moment, Arts and Heritage, Libraries, Visitor Centre and events are all in the one group, which is an historical grouping. So we will look to split them out further along with the Three Waters areas too. So just highlighting that they'll be an evolving process. We will be looking to improve as we work through them. As far as the information itself, what we have noticed is overall for April, we've actually pulled back on our deficit by 160,000 compared to the March month. And again, you'll see with going through them that it's the same things that we've been bringing to council all year, is that depreciation is one of the biggest drivers for the variance. Chemical costs, unavoidable increases in insurance, chemicals, finance costs have all contributed to the relative unfavourable variances where they are. And where there's favourable variances, it tends to be because we have received capital grants to offset capital expenditure. But I'm happy to take questions and go from there.
Yeah. Open it to questions. Michael.
In terms of, so the outcome year to date is a materially higher deficit than was projected. So what are the implications for debt and working capital?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the implications, the majority of that deficit actually relates to depreciation. So it is depreciation that we have not collected rates for, which means we may not have collected enough to cover off renewals. In saying that, we have tracked pretty well compared to our renewals program. For finance costs, that is a real cash flow effect, and it has had an impact on our cash flow. I guess when you're running deficits and when elected members choose not to fully fund depreciation, there's always going to be impacts on cash flow. We're not collecting as much cash as we would like to cover our renewal program, which means that our debt repayment goes down. So it is something to be mindful going forward that we, to move back to fully funding depreciation in future years to help with cash flow and help with renewals and debt repayment.
So as a follow-up question, so there's an implication that we're therefore going to go through a sustained period of higher rate increases and the risks associated with that.
Through the Chair, not preempting anything that is going to come through the long-term plan. With the initial projections are, if we are to go back to fully funding our depreciation, then that will bring us up, that will bring the rates increase up again next year. The proposal may be to move that step change over a number of years to slowly get back to fully funding depreciation. There are other levers available to elected members and will be considered as part of the long-term plan around potential of sale of surplus land or assets. But again, there's and levels of service is the other driver that we can use to look at that going forward and help stabilise the finances going forward.
Are there any other questions on these reports? Councillor Gardine.
The Parks and Reserves has come into surplus again, but I mean it's because of a big lump of cash come in that hasn't been spent. Is that right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is actually it's the capital grant for Tulloch Park. So the work has been undertaken and the capital expenditure has occurred, and this is the Better Off Funding Recognition capital grant for that work. So it's not cash received unspent. It has been allocated. It's cash received allocated to the Tulloch Park splash pad project.
So all the expenses are in for that in this year. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question on that. We will still have to spend a lot more money on Tulloch Park, though.
So that income matches the expenditure to date as at 30th of April.
Okay.
So there is still some more funding to come in for that project, and there's still some more expenditure. So this is the initial funding that we have gone back to them and said, we have spent this money, please provide us with that funding now.
Thank you, Yone. That cleared up the same question that I had about had we spent the money. Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Richard McPhail.
Yeah, just a general question. You'll be able to answer it for me through the chair too, Lorne. The increase in expenditure for civil defence professional services, is that training? Is there Sims training in that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that relates to the September event last year.
Right.
So traditionally, all we have had in our budgets has been the amount that we then forward on to Emergency Management Southland to manage or to provide that service. Traditionally we have not put in a contingency for events that happen within our district and costs that we may incur in responding to those events. We had anticipated trying to do that for the annual plan this year, but given where we were sitting with the 21.4% proposed increase, that was one of the items that we backed back out again. In time, we believe that this is a fund that needs to be built up, but if you've got staff who are doing sandbagging and you've got staff here who need sustenance and activities out in the community that need to be paid for, then that's effectively what they're covered. So we're trying to provide more transparency about what these events cost, and so by recording it there, it provides elected members with that transparency.
Thanks, Lorne. It's probably quite pertinent after the weather that we had on Sunday.
Yeah. Are there any other questions on this report? Would someone like to move that the report be received? Is that a question or are you moving?
Happy to move, but just thank you to Lorne for bringing these reports forward. It feels like a long time coming, and it's nice to see all of them here, and definitely a work in progress, but I think it's just nice to have the information in front of us, so really appreciate the work that's gone into this.
So it's moved, Ben Bell. Can I have a seconder, please? Michael Chamberlain. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. We've now come to the conclusion of the open meeting, and we'll have a couple of minute break and then we'll move into public excluded. Thank you, the two members of the public, for attending.